It's the Andy and Remington Steel Show on your screens tonight. It's the Andy and Remington Steel Show for your home delight. We're talking about Age of Sigmar and anything else that is cool. Talking about Warhammer fantasy, it's easy to learn the rules. Andy and Remington, Andy and Remington, Andy and Remington Show.
Welcome one and all, it's time for the Andy and Rem Show, and I believe this is episode 110. Can you believe it?
Can believe that, Andy. 110.
That much?
That's got to be the age of, well, one of the oldest people in the United Kingdom, right? 110.
You would think. And just to prove that we're upping our game all the time, we're not just resting on this lofty perch we've already crafted for ourselves in this world. Not only have we got snazzy pre-intro music now, which is of course a nice instrumental version of our theme song, but we've also got, how professional is this? This is what the professionals do. They have a microphone actually dangling into the shot so you can see it.
Nice, man. I used to do that. I used to be a bit more professional.
A bit more
It's
of a
funny
dangle.
though, isn't it? Yeah, the more professional our show gets, the less viewers. It's going against all known laws of YouTube. It's exciting.
Well, there is actually a battle raging as well, not just for the mortal realms, not just for the old world, but also for the like-dislike ratio. Because within like an hour of this video being announced, I think there were 7 dislikes on it already. So the squad are out there, and I hope that our people are up to the challenge.
Let's get the dislikes going, guys. Unclick like and then click dislike. I'm going to do that right now. We've got 7 dislikes. We only just started the show, man. Surely that if you get dislikes, it ranks up in the YouTube viewership, no?
Well, I don't know how the algorithm works now. It could be completely the opposite. But
I always thought we'd go against what you meant to do. Worked for us so far.
What I'm thinking is that there are a lot of people out there who may have disliked the show because they've only just heard of it, because we're covering a topic that's maybe the first time they've latched onto this show because of that, with the old world and what we miss from the old world and what we'd like to see in the new old world, which we'll be getting to a bit later. So some of those people, maybe, they think, who are these punks we've never heard of before, dislike immediately. But when they actually sit there, they've left the video playing by mistake, and now they're enraptured with our tones. And once they start absorbing all this red-hot, juicy content, then I think they're going to switch over from the dislike side to the like.
I think that's a well-founded and well-put argument there, Andy. And listen, if it's me you don't like, I can handle that. But come on, please give a like to Andy.
Can't argue with that logic.
Look at them eyes. All right.
So, we have got a packed house in the audience as usual tonight, and I can see lots of familiar and some new names in there as well, and we'll be referring to them throughout the show, especially for our main topic, which I already mentioned. But, first things first, I think we should run through a couple of things. So, you sent me a few images before the show, and I'm looking here at what appears to be a skeleton kind of Bretonnian horseman, is that? With some peasants around him, some fanatic-looking evil cultists of some description. What's going on with this?
I never like to disappoint you, Andy. I know you're always, anything that involves peasants, you are drawn towards, aren't you?
It's not the way I remember it.
Well, this is, my friend, this is a Bretonnian Grail relic with some battle pilgrims defending it. And they had an idea to get one of the old Grail Knights, dig him out of his tomb and stick him on his horse, a bit like the film El Cid the Champion.
Sounds a
Charlton Heston.
Sounds a bit like sacrilege to me.
Well, if you come near this guy and sort of do anything to harm the relics or insult the battle pilgrims, they go into a frenzy. And I went into a frenzy when I put these on round bases, and then they announced square bases are coming back. So you can imagine my disappointment.
I don't think we need to imagine it. I think we can see it etched all over your face. And that hairstyle is actually a product of the return to square base. I think the frustration you felt as you added the last miniature to its round base, only to log onto Facebook and say, "Oh, square bases are coming back." No, and it was just like
It's a joke, man.
hair all over
I
the
feel
place.
like ping pong ball being thrown back one way or the other. It took me 4 years to convert to round, 5 years, nay, 5 years to convert to round bases. Almost hundreds, if not up to 1,000 miniatures. Now they want to reverse back time again.
Well,
This
some of
is a conspiracy.
us had the foresight not to round base up our Warhammer Fantasy armies.
You're a stalwart of the hobby, Andy. What can I say? You're stuck with
I was holding
Goblin
out
Green.
hope.
Goblin Green is still stuck to your miniatures somehow.
Is Goblin Green something you miss about the old world while we're at it?
I dislike it. It was like something about the Goblin Green and the red. They were the two most prominent colours. Sometimes yellow. You look at the 1990s Warhammer, full of like bright yellow, bright red, and Goblin Green. But there you go. You know, it puts it in an age, doesn't it? It becomes vintage.
People are
It's like
asking.
for 20 years.
People in the chat are asking for some Remington hairstyling products, by the way. Now, I'm not sure whether that can be a thing, Remington hair grooming electronic accessories, because I believe that's already a well-known brand. I think you might be infringing on a few copyrights by going down that route.
I think you might be pleased to know I do actually concoct my own hair oil. It's basically coconut juice, and I spray it on my hair.
So you don't venture out
No.
into the wilderness and harvest it from unicorns?
No, pure coconut, mate. I put that stuff on my face. I put it on my hair. I eat it. I use it as mouthwash. The secret of my eternal youth, my friend.
So if you want to look like Remington, just smother yourself in coconut juice day and night. Do you actually crack the coconuts open yourself and harvest the fresh juices, or do you buy like cartons of coconut milk?
You can buy it now. You can buy the sort of coconut oil. So many coconut products. You know, some are more cheaper than others.
So you
Some are
don't
like-
actually harvest the coconuts yourself then?
No, because we live in England, Andy, and the coconuts here are like brown with hairs on, and they've got about 10 millilitres of juice in them. Like, pathetic. There you are.
Well, anyone out there who's got an abundance of coconuts near them, then maybe you can get in touch and we can start releasing our Andy and Rem themed coconut products and accessories.
Yeah, you could do with some of that, Andy. I think we'd all agree.
I don't know
No.
about that.
You need to do something, mate. I don't know why. It's getting curly now.
Yeah, look at this. Like, boing, springy. I think that's enough on the hair, though. So, not only this picture, you also sent me, following it immediately, this. And is this something that you wanted to compare and contrast the two images together?
I mean, I was hoping you'd comment on how fantastically painted they were, but never mind.
Well, obviously,
Apparently
it's a
we
very
got- we
nice
got-
paint job there, isn't it?
Thank you. That means he thinks it's amazing, dear listeners. So, you know, yeah, I don't know what to do with that, really. I suppose I better keep it, but yeah, I love their miniatures. I jumped on the Bretonian wagon just a tad too late, and now they're very rare indeed. What are we looking at next, then?
So we're trying to make a point with this, what appears to be a Bone Reaper that looks quite similar to the Bretonian skeleton.
Does it? Oh, I wonder about that. It looks
Well,
like
it's the same kind of
general,
thing.
isn't
It's
it?
a skeleton on the back of a dead horse. So I assumed there were comparisons to be drawn, and that's why you sent me the images back to back. But if I'm looking too
No,
deeply
I
at this, then
didn't.
let me know.
If I sent you the skeleton thing, that was a mistake because.
Well, it was an incredible coincidence then. So
Yeah,
we've
no, I
got
didn't mean to send you that.
we've got a
It was
comment here on
repulsive.
coconuts. Jack says, if Monty Python and the Holy Grail taught me anything, it's that there are plenty of coconuts in England. There are plenty of coconuts
Clappers-
about the place, not that difficult to find, especially if they're carried over by some kind of flying beast or other, but as Remington pointed out, maybe there are higher quality coconuts elsewhere in the world. He's obviously not pleased with the moisture levels of our coconuts.
No, talking of coconuts, right? talking about the old world, maybe they're going to venture out into more tropical realms and explore the vast expanse, continent of Lustria, maybe, or Nippon.
You think
Wouldn't
they're
that be
gonna?
interesting?
You think they're gonna expand out? You don't think they're gonna kind of
Yeah.
hone in on what's
Uh,
already there and like delve deeper?
Well, I think considering they've just redrawn the map of the old world, I think they'll probably just stick with that. To be fair, but that's a shame. That's a shame. But what can you do, man?
Well, here's something we can do. Moved on to another picture that you sent me, which is your little Bretonian Robin Hood inspired heroes. And one of them
Yeah, these
appears
are
to
cool,
be in
man.
much sharper focus than the other, which I assume is an artistic choice you've made there with the photography.
No, it's just I had it on portrait mode, and I was like, it was like eeny, meeny, miny, mo. Which one should it focus on?
Well, I think it works. It kind of gives the impression that he's standing there in the background, kind of like, yep, I'm just back here while this big guy's like dominating the shot.
The big guy, he looks. I tried to paint him a bit like the guy from the guy from Game of Thrones. You know, the northern ginger haired one.
I've not seen it, but I think I know who you're talking about from pictures.
What's his name, guys? In the comments, you know who I'm talking about, don't you? He's one of the. He actually survives until the end.
And you
Torrent.
finished
Tormund.
basing these guys up now as well.
Thanks, Mickey. Thanks for Warhammer, and thank you, Stu. Yeah, Stu says, because Andy won't read it out because it's complimentary. These look great, Ren. So there, Andy. There you are.
Well, there's always one, isn't there? So, moving on. Now, this is before we get to our juicy topic to sink our fangs into. There's also these pictures, which I don't think we've looked at before, which are some of the new cow elves, and these are some of the infantry here that we haven't really looked at before. We looked at some of the big juicy stuff, but not these guys. So there's some on horses, some with spears, looking quite a bit more like the old high elves than the big ridiculous mountain cows that we've seen before. Do you like these models?
I do. These look class, man. These look really, really class. If I was going to get some, I'd get these guys. And I think the horses and the spearmen are included in the new box set that's coming out. Plus Eltharion. Is it Eltharion? The guy with that's just the light. His armor is shining light, and there's no one inside it. Ghostly. I might be wrong about that, but I think that's the box. It's all fancy and it's all coming soon.
I will say though, these miniatures illustrate one of my pet peeves with wargaming in general. It's when miniatures drastically overhang their base. How do you feel about that? Because when I'm putting together an army, even if they're not going to rank up, then I would still like to be able to push them into contact with enemy units. And if they're all like poking out really far with their spear that covers twice the distance of the base, then you're going to end up poking things in the face, aren't you? They have these such huge bases. I don't think it would be that difficult to rein them in a little bit. Maybe make the miniatures a tiny bit smaller, or angle them so the spears are a little bit more upward, perhaps. Is this something that affects you at all? Or as more of a hobby project kind of guy?
I like them, Andy. I like them a lot.
I think they'd be great on, for example, a multi-based unit.
Put figures on round base. You're going to put figures on round bases. You might as well use the space. You know what I mean? So I think they're free from the square base, regimental static poses. Now they can actually thrust their weapons out.
Well, if you were multi-basing them, say for example for Kings of War, then you could have whatever poses you want, and then just kind of jigsaw them all together on the base, so they don't have to overhang the tray at all, which is my preferred method now.
You're not really an elf fan, are you, Andy? I don't think you've got any elves.
Safe to say I'm not really an elf fan. I did once set fire to an elf.
What, in real life?
It was a miniature. I didn't discover a family of elves living in the back garden and set fire to one of those.
Why did you do that?
That was when I was making a parody video of the guy that set fire to his entire Dark Elf army after Age of Sigmar was announced. So, in solidarity, I set fire to one elf. That video's got quite a lot of hits.
Elves? Yeah?
I've always preferred dwarves really to elves, even though obviously in stature and physique and appearance I'm vastly more elven than I am dwarf-like. Except maybe with this coming in, that could change soon. But I don't know, something about the dwarves, kind of the grumpy little guys with the beards, always appealed more than the more graceful, kind of snooty elves.
I think if you were in a room, right, let's say you're in a doctor's waiting room, you sat there, and on your left is an elf, and on the right is a dwarf, and there they are in real life. I think you'd be more drawn towards the elf because they would smell nice, they would be very pleasant, they'd be very mystical, enchanting, and the dwarf would be moaning, would be probably really stinky, and probably like picking his nose and wiping it on his trousers, his loincloth even. So
I think you're
yeah,
making a fair point, but
and he'll probably smoke indoors as well with his pipe.
real life is a very different thing. I think in real life you would much rather hang out with elves than dwarves, probably, unless you're like the ultimate disgusting party animal who doesn't mind just foul stenches day and night as long as you get beer. But I think most people would prefer to hang out with elves. However, does that make them more interesting as a fantasy race in terms of reading material and backstory and model collections?
No, I will agree with you, Andy, because I think my argument is not yet complete. Because I think once you get to know the dwarf, you'll find them really funny, and once you build up a bit of trust, you know what I mean. It's a bond for life.
Once you get through that kind of prickly bearded exterior, you get to a heart of gold, do you think?
Yeah, probably best not to mention gold though, because I think the dwarves are like proper tight-fisted. But I think the elves will in the end, the elf will be impenetrable. No, it will be this far and no further, unless you're one of them. You know.
And we've got some archers here as well. And the main thing I saw in comments on this image was people doubting the physics of the bow and whether it would actually work. It seems to have 3 strings to it, and the way it bends isn't perhaps that natural looking. Do you think it looks a bit off? There were all the like professional or amateur like engineers coming out of the woodwork for this one, commenting on how it defied the laws of physics.
When I first saw the teaser for that bow, because it was in a GW, what the hell is that, wasn't it? And I thought, okay, that's going to be like one of the heroes who's like, he fires 3 shots in one go. Fair enough, it's the hero. But then it was like, yeah, that's the rank and file archers. They all have like 3 bowstrings. That was a bit weird then. It's a bit too much, unnecessary.
I think I agree with you there. Although I will say they are well stocked with arrows. Because if you look on their packs, got quite a lot there. And I remember in the past thinking that maybe certain miniatures didn't have quite enough arrows with them. Thinking back to Bretonnian bowmen, did they have a little pack of arrows on their belt?
I think they probably had 1 or 2.
Yeah, I'm not sure, but these guys look fully stocked, and of course the arrow in the hand as well. It's not as huge and ridiculous and bulky like the Stormcast Eternal arrows, but of course the old classic bowmen who were just like, we're aiming with nothing, and they were about to fire an arrow made of air towards the enemy.
Yeah, I mean, when you look at like the Glade Guard, do you remember Wood Elf Glade Guard?
Yes.
They were like converted like crazy, man. People got those figures and made such cool poses with them. I hope you can do that with these, because they look like they're all doing the same pose there.
So, oh, we don't look at that yet. So, let's have a quick look. Has anything interesting come up in the chat in the last few minutes before we move into our juicy topics for the evening? Because of course we're going to look at some old world stuff, and we've got What the Hell Is That to come as well, which is a very spicy one this week. So we've got people talking about our hair quite a lot and facial hair. It looks like you've had a bit of a groom in the facial hair department this week, rather than just letting it run free.
I don't know, mate. I thought I did a nice little trim there.
Yeah,
like Sinbad, and I've got the dark elf corsair hair. You know.
Yeah, I haven't felt the need to do much with this
Looking
yet. Just going to see how it turns out. And it's not like straying halfway down the neck like it does on some people, like a werewolf. So I'm not feeling the need to do any trimming just yet. So I'm going to see where it ends up.
Nice. I think keep doing it, man, and maybe go for like a Viking beard plait.
Well, you've got to do it
That's
once in your
quite a
life, haven't you?
dwarfish thing to do.
Might as well do it at least once.
Definitely, man. Yeah. You got to do it while you still got brown hair there, you know.
Well, it's
Then you'll get the
dwindling.
two-tone thing going on.
I mean, there's quite a lot of grey
Yeah,
creeping
but you
in
know,
there.
the ladies love that, Andy. You know, it's the badger look.
Is that what it's known as? And
That's
I don't
what
mind. I don't mind a few
that's
grey
what I'm
hairs as
calling
long
it.
as I retain my hair. I think that's the most important thing.
Yeah.
I think.
We've
I
been
think.
doing this
I
a
think we
long
can
time,
agree on
Andy.
that.
It's not surprising.
You would think that maybe with
Doing this a long time.
the stress of being
Not like-
down in the trenches, providing our journalistic insight and getting down there, getting our hands dirty, and then delivering the information nuggets back to the people. Just the stress and the strain of that would have made us lose our hair by now, you would think. But we seem to be holding on to it quite well.
Great, Andy. I mean, it's the most disliked Warhammer show on YouTube.
How many dislikes are we
probably
up
at the
to
minute.
now?
We're up to 11 dislikes. So, guys, join us in our experiment here. Dislike this video and let's flush out people who have something against us.
We're vaccinating ourselves against dislikes, I think, by giving ourselves just a little dose now. And then in the future, people
Yes,
think,
it's-
well, they like
it's-
dislikes, so we're not going to do it.
It's what's known as herd immunity in the British community.
Hopefully it's a bit more effective than that strategy. So, Bazooka agrees with you on the badger. Thinks that, yeah, that's the way to go.
Nice. Yes, he says Maxim. Hey, Maxim. He says the Badger sounds like an old 80s show where the main character wore a trench coat and drove a Jaguar. A bit like the Equalizer, right? Edward Woodward quality.
Either that or
And
Bodger
the
and
Equalizer.
Badger. He died, didn't he? About a few years ago.
Bodger and Badger, Dempsey and Makepeace. Remember that? I'm showing my age now. Dislikes. Brad Jimenez says dislikes because of all this elf talk.
Well, we can stop talking about elves if you like. We could actually do what the hell is that right now and then talk about the old world, couldn't we? Because if anything could
Let's
ever
do it.
rein back the dislike ratio, I think it's what the hell is that. So,
Do it.
of course, anyone who's unfamiliar with what the hell is that, there's going to be an image on the screen that pops up after this wonderful little intro video for it. There's going to be, let's see, we've got 5 miniatures represented in it today, and the theme of this one, it's like a tower of texture. So you can have a look at them all, determine which each of the 5 are, and then let us know in the chat, and we'll see if anyone can guess more than one of them. Some of them are quite difficult, hopefully not all, and we're going to dive into that intro video for what the hell is that, if I can click the right thing and accidentally not reveal the solution. Right now.
What the hell is that? What the hell is that? Is it a chaos dwarf or a vampire bear? Oh, what the hell is that? What the hell is that? Oh, what the hell is that? What the hell is that? Only Andy and Remington, Andy and Remy, Andy and Remington know. What the hell is that? What the hell is that? Is it Sigmar's beard or Neferata's hat? Oh, what the hell is that? Oh, what the hell is that? Is it a mangled squig or a sorcerer's rat? Only Andy and Remington! Andy and Remy, Andy and Remington know.
There it is, everybody. Look at that. That is just a solid wall of juicy, delicious texture there. All of these are miniatures currently available on the Games Workshop website in the Age of Sigmar section. And you know what, I've thought about branching this concept out into the Kings of War world as well, because I think they would really appreciate what the king hell is that. Don't you think? I think that could be a real winner in that community, so I may branch out over there. because I think this is a winner of a concept. I just think it needs to be exposed to more eyeballs.
You've already been pretty much outcast from the Warhammer community, and now, you know what I mean, you're going to get outcast from the Kings of War. You've only got me left, Andy.
I don't know if it's this that caused it though.
Of course, we've got the guys in the chat. Yeah, ever our supporters, man. We're doing great. We've almost got more dislikes than likes, by the way.
Good. So we've got some guesses already, and you're going to have to do more than just telling us the general race of the miniature. You have to tell us precisely. You have to tell us which one you're talking about as well. So, let's see.
Like an art project, Andy.
Andrew says the blue one is a Star Drake, and yes it is. So there is one down. The blue one is a Star Drake. Some of them I think are quite easy, some of them more difficult. Let's see. Bazooka says, are these to scale? They're scaled differently from each other. So you can't just go by size. Although most of them are scales, in fact. Quite a few of them, quite scaly. Maxim says Marathi's wing for the pink one. Yep, there's another one, correct. I thought that was quite a difficult one, actually. It looks kind of like a worm, but no, it's Marathi's wing. Okay, Dino, we've already got the Star Drake, but says the other one in the middle is the Maw Crusher. There's another one. It's the one next to it. It's kind of white and greeny looking. And we've got
killing it.
2 more to go. So the 2 at the top now are the only ones that I haven't seen anyone get yet. So we've got a few guesses. Raphael, no, one of them is not a Troglodon. Got the answers written down in front of me in case I forget which one's which, because I'm piling up so many models into these things now. Maxim says human flesh. Well, there is human flesh on the screen, but that's not part of the what the hell is that game, unfortunately. So you don't win a point for that. So I'll be impressed if anyone gets the one at the top. That one is very difficult. And no, Joshua, it is not that you've just guessed.
It looks like the crack in your ceiling, Andy, while you're lying in bed, awake at night, worrying about all the dislikes.
It is actually. It does look a lot like that. Let's see. So, Warhammer says the yellow is a Carnosaur. No, it's not. And
saber-toothed tiger.
There is not a saber-toothed tiger involved here.
They're not even called that anymore, are they? What are they called? They keep changing the names of stuff, man. I can't.
Are you talking about the ogre unit?
Yes.
I don't know what they're called now.
Stop changing the names, man. Just say what it is.
Okay, let's see. We've got Raphael says Vampire Lord Wing. Nope, there is not a Vampire Lord Wing involved here. Nova says left one is Caragor. Oh. Sponge Raphael. Oh, yeah, go on.
No, Raphael says Achelian Leviathan. Achelian Leviathan.
That is correct. The kind of yellowy one is a Leviathan. So just the top one to go now. And he also thinks that Vampire Lord Wing is the top one, but it is not. I can tell you that one at the top is not a wing. This is quite a difficult one, I think.
So it's the flesh of a monster. Is that correct?
This one is not.
Uh-huh.
Many of them were monster flesh, but this one isn't. And I can tell you that someone has actually got it right. This is very impressive. Doc says a Mortizan Bone Shaper, and that's exactly what it is. The one at the top is the Bone Shaper. So I'm going to pop up the solution now so everyone can see. There you go. Those are the models in question. So we've got Marathi down there, we've got a Star Drake, we've got a Maw Crusher, we've got a Leviathan, and then we've got the Bone Shaper. So, well done to everyone that got one of those correct.
Well played, Doc, man. You did great to get that. I didn't even know that one.
I didn't think anyone would get that. It's just a crack in the skull that the guy is standing on, so that's quite impressive. So Dino says that was pretty easy today. Well, I thought last week was very difficult, so I thought I'd tone it down a bit. Okay, there we go. What the hell is that? Is complete. That'll be back next week, of course, which is the #1 rated segment in the history of live wargaming shows, I'm led to believe, by a team of researchers. So, Mr. Remington. The old world. There are obviously elements to the old world that we miss. There are things that we don't miss quite so much, but things that we do miss about the world and the game system. We're going to look at some of those now, and then we're going to see what the audience miss as well, and then discuss each of those things in agonising depth, which is what we do best. Deep probing analysis. So the first thing I miss about the old world is square bases, and there is a picture of some square bases for illustrative purposes. So, obviously, you're someone who has rebased all your armies onto rounds now. You went through that painful journey, and maybe living with a twinge of regret now for that decision. So, do you miss square bases in general?
Do I miss square bases? The more miniatures you have in an army, the more appealing square bases become. How about that?
I think that's a fair assessment. In a mass battle game, being able to put the models right next to each other, rank them up, push them along on trays, rather than having to move each individual goblin around in units of 100, which can be a bit nightmarish. And I know you can get kind of flexible, weird movement trays that the round bases can slot into, but they're kind of a mess, and as soon as you go near terrain, that kind of thing seems to fall apart as well.
But you know, round bases, figures on round bases, they're much more characterful.
And back in the fantasy days, I did used to refer to round bases as safety bases, implying that 40k was more of a children's game, that they couldn't be trusted with the sharp corners of a square base.
No, Andy, there was a few miniatures that were released on hexagonal bases.
Back in the day.
Yeah. I think they should just compromise and bring back those. Let's just forget the square bases, forget the round bases. Let's compromise, right? Let's bring the old and the new together, make hexagonal bases, because they can lock together and they're like individual as well, right? And it would be like blockbusters.
A little bit after the hexagonal bases, then there was a period where you'd have mostly one kind of base and then another one randomly thrown in. So in 40k armies, for example, you'd have Space Marines on round bases, and then you'd have Space Marine bikes on like square cavalry bases. And in Warhammer Fantasy, you'd have most of your troops on square bases, but then you'd have other things on rounds. So particularly the flying round bases, they used to be treated quite differently to other units. So they became more uniform over time with the square and the round. They got it down round 40k, square fantasy mostly, and then everything just turned into round. Is there anything right now in 40k or Age of Sigmar that's on a square base? If there is, let us know, because I can't think of anything off the top of my head right now.
Andy, I've just got to stop you there. You might have heard the air raid.
Shocking news.
I've just had $1 million idea.
Oh god, here we go. We're going to be rich again.
Okay, guys. This is a game changer. It literally is a game changer, and I don't think it's been done before. And I'm copyrighting it on this show. The Remington triangle base. They interlock together to make various shapes for units. You can go. I mean, if you do it right, you could get like a rectangle, couldn't you? I mean, like, we'll just make a bunch of them for you. Keep going, Andy. I'm on a roll here. Keep going.
So while Mr. Remington is making a mock-up prototype of his new basing system, let's see what the audience think about square bases. So Dave F mentions Rough Riders. I do remember that the Imperial Guard cavalry did used to come on square bases. I don't know if they still do, if that's a thing. I feel like I might be about to sneeze, actually, from all the excitement, so I might just mute myself for a second.
Oh, God. Dino has just shattered my dream. That is already out there, Rem. This mechanic is included in Mortal Gods. Well.
So it was a potentially $1 million idea, but you're a little bit late to the $1 million party. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, well, it ain't been done in Warhammer Fantasy, so I'm having it still.
Okay.
So you can take your game and put it where the sun don't shine. All right, because I'm having this. 2 round, two square, but it's like pizza.
I was going to say it's like Dairy Lee cheese triangles.
That's good. You can have warriors back to back, or they're joined to make a smaller regiment there, right? Or like this, so sort of a different shape.
Which way would you have the models facing? Would they be facing into one of the flat sides or into one of the points?
Well, you could have it like that. So if it was like, say, a bunch of bowmen, they could all be facing like that. It's like, don't mess with us. Or like Oryx, it's like the teeth.
And then potentially the back
This is
rank from the other
groundbreaking
angle.
stuff, guys, and you saw it on the Andy. I mean, look, just do another one, man. This is phenomenal.
Warhammer says
Well, get with
Remington
our
is
show,
going to
guys.
invent this physical
Keep them
cube.
dislikes coming, by the way.
This physical cube, which is a 1 to 6 random number generator. Is that something you're about to invent? Because I feel like that might already be out there in the world. In a crude form, no doubt. Dicey Guy's head is aching, presumably from the sheer innovation that you've just blown his mind with this outside the box, outside the triangle thinking.
Okay, you want your old school regiment? There you go. You want like detachments? There you go. But they come together. Or what do? We can make the lizard man kind of star formation. Like you could have like cool formations, right? Butterfly.
I think there's potential in this, but it needs a bit of tweaking. Do you think triangle is the optimum shape for this then? Because you do realise that you can put squares together and they actually fit quite well.
Can you do this? Like a conga line. Okay? Like that. The spearhead formation. I like it. Or dragon's tooth formation. Love it, mate. And that is officially copyrighted on the Andy and Remington show. Show number 110. 110. I like that, guys. If anyone thinks it's been done before, I am not listening to you because I just invented it.
And how about this? To help you with your triangle base scheme, before they're available, what about the Remington pizza slice? So you can slice up your bits of plastic card or whatever you're using to make these bases. Think about that.
Well, this implement I used was rather useful, so no reason why we can't trademark a version of that, because I think this might be made by someone else.
I would imagine it is made by someone else, unless you went outside and fashioned it yourself.
Well, perhaps the winner of something in today's show, I could send them the first prototype. How about that for a prize?
I don't think they could ask for a better prize than that. Well, they could, but they wouldn't get it.
Literally a piece of history.
Okay.
There you go. Does that answer your question?
I think it does.
Bases?
We've got people suggesting that they want to see a return to some of those formations that you used to have in the old world with the Bretonian cavalry or the archers that could form a bit of a triangle at various points in time. And obviously you can do that kind of thing in Age of Sigmar, but you don't really get much of a benefit from doing that sort of thing as much. So, moving on to the next thing. Now, this was from our Facebook group. Someone suggested that this dwarf king on a throne is what he misses from the old world. And I don't know whether that just means dwarves in general, and we have a lot of pictures of dwarves coming up later on, actually. But still, do you think that this specifically is something that you miss? A nice square-based old-style dwarf, none of this sky dwarves, fire dwarves, just old-school, grumpy, gold-hoarding, mountain-dwelling, mountain-reclaiming dwarves?
There's a huge gap in Age of Sigmar that should be filled by dwarves, no doubt. And you know, those sky dwarves that you can't even see their faces because it's covered in like...
Yeah, they don't even have their beards poking out. What's up with that?
That's crazy, man. I don't like that. I mean, they should bring out an old school dwarf faction, definitely, man. Dwardin, or whatever you want to call it today. But yeah, Thorgrim Gudgebearer, what an awesome character. And talking of old world and dwarves, in Games Workshop website today, they're doing some special offer where you can buy the digital version of the End Times, all 5 books.
Do you own them all already?
I had them all in hardback. No, the first one, the Gash, I got digitally, and I'll always regret that because you know what I mean. There's no resale value in digital, is there? And after that, I got the hardbacks, and I'm glad I got those because they're really, really great. Still got RK on the final
the
one.
only resale value in a digital would be if you illegally record an audiobook with it and charge people for it. I wouldn't recommend people do that because it's probably breaking countless laws.
It's a mammoth task though, because they are big books. I think the Glockin is the shortest book, but it's a really good read.
Is it the most
Loads of
foul and
fun.
vile and disgusting as well?
Yes.
Is there lots of talk of kind of putrid pustules and all kinds of spilt entrails and festering organs?
Yeah. There's a lot of humans that get the pox, put it that way.
I'm not surprised. So, I think we can agree we want old school dwarves. Next, artillery dice and scatter dice. This is obviously something that's disappeared. Do I miss it to the extent I think it should be in games? That might be pushing it a bit, but I do miss the fact that it exists because it was fun to scatter artillery around the place. Not so much the whole cannons 10 from the back malarkey that we were so familiar with a few years ago, but more so for rock lobbers and that kind of thing where it would scatter and you could potentially hit other nearby units with it instead of just your target or nothing. There's this huge rock flying through the air into a packed enemy battle line. If it doesn't hit that unit, there's a good chance it's going to hit something else. And I don't think that is well enough represented.
Yeah, I second you on that. I miss it. I love it. Yeah, it had an element of like gotcha in it, and it isn't really that anymore.
I think it's a bit too clean the way that shooting works now like that. I would much rather be able to scatter them around, even at the risk of hitting your own troops. Of course, as a predominantly dwarf player, then I would always have runes on my war machines anyway that allow me to re-roll them about 18 times until I get what I want. So it didn't affect me too much. But as a player of some of the more puny races, did you ever find that the artillery dice came back to bite you?
No.
Did you even get to use them? I'm sure you didn't use them with your beastmen.
No. Didn't use them. Yeah.
Let's see, yeah, which armies did you play the most? Beastmen, your wood elves maybe? I don't think they had any artillery.
No, I did have a whole metal dwarf army, but I never completed painting them in time for any of our games. So, and then you always played dwarves, so then so you played the dwarves, so I never got to really use my artillery dice.
One thing I don't miss about the scatter dice is the debate on which way the arrow is pointing.
Yeah,
especially people who roll the arrow dice really far away from the action, so that then as they're moving across, okay, it's in that direction, and by the time they get there, it's like that. So it's actually pointing directly at one of your units now. Whereas, because I remember when we played on Universal Battle, those quite a few games of Warhammer we did on there, the scatter dice, it would actually tell you the degrees to which you would have to turn the angle and move it, so it was 100% accurate.
They were good games, man.
They took 4.5 hours, but they were fine.
Yeah.
So let's see.
Cool.
Got any comments on these dice? Andrew says, I don't miss the dice, just the arguing. And Stu played Chaos, so artillery dice were not a concern. Did the Hell Cannon have artillery dice with it?
I couldn't tell you. I think it was mainly Skaven, wasn't it? Skaven and dwarves that used that, and maybe the Bretonnian trebuchet.
I remember the uproar when the organ gun was changed in the most recent dwarf army book before the world exploded. And it used to be that there was like a 1 in 6 chance that something catastrophic would happen to it. But suddenly it became more like a 1 in 36 chance with the new book, and people weren't happy about that. So very pleasing. Yeah. Okay, next. Now you can see here we've got what looks like combat going on. Now, I'm not talking about the models being removed necessarily from combat here. That's not necessarily something I miss, because you end up with a big ugly piece of movement tray sitting on the table. But one thing I do kind of miss is combat resolution. It might take a bit of time, but I actually thought it was quite fun working out who'd got the most kills, how many ranks you had, whether you've got the standard bearer, the army standard in there, any other bonuses that you had that applied. I always thought that was quite fun. Was that something you enjoyed, the whole combat resolution system?
Yeah, the more often you do it, the more sort of second nature it becomes. But it is like a lot to remember. And you kind of, it meant that every unit needed a musician, needed a standard bearer. I mean, you'd have to pay a bit extra for it, but you know, you had a champion and maybe another hero in there. But yeah, but it gave each unit a sort of a complete feel, didn't it? You know, having those special characters within the unit, kind of cool. I mean, I've just given you loads of pictures of my doors. Might get time to see them there. If not, maybe next week.
We will get to them in a minute, definitely.
Yeah, but that will illustrate my point.
So, have we got any thoughts on this? We've got people talking about how triangle bases already exist in multiple game systems. So, I think maybe you've been beaten to this one. Apparently, Footsore Miniatures do triangle bases for their Gods of War game, according to Graham.
Well, Graham, thanks for that information, but I don't remember them ever being used for like Warhammer, so that's what I'm saying.
Can't argue with that. So,
$1 million idea, says Maxim. Little star shaped used to perfectly spaced circular bases. Show us a picture of that, Maxim. Illustrate your point there, mate.
Interesting. Andrew's $1 million idea: trapezoids.
Can I offer out $1 billion idea to you guys?
If you want to put that out for the public and not just quietly.
Well, I haven't got the technical skills to make it happen, and I haven't got the time. I'm running an industry here already. But
okay, let's put it out there. Let's make a billionaire live on the show.
Okay. I think people might have already mentioned it, but like you've got Shazam, okay? Shazam. You play a song, you hear a song on the radio, you like it, and the DJ didn't tell you what it was, so your phone reads it, tells you what song it is, okay? Cool. What if you've got a melody in the back of your mind and it's haunting you, and you can't quite put your finger on what it's from? So you sing into your phone, and it tells you what it is you're singing, or what melody from what musical or what film soundtrack. What do you think of that? Remington Recognizer. Maybe that's a bit of a mouthful, but
does that definitely not exist already?
No, let's put it to the test, guys, because there are some very knowledgeable people, and you're a bit of a film buff, Andy. What I'd like to do is play you this melody that I think I wrote, yet it sounds so familiar. Maybe you can tell me what it is, and if not, then I can make my own tune out of it.
Well, before you start there, we've got a couple of comments here. Bazooka says there's already one out there. Radbat says, I think you can do that to Google.
What, singing Google? I don't know about that.
So is this? Let's have a listen to this. I'm ready on the volume slider here because I don't know how crazy this is going to be, because this is Remington we're talking about.
It is good, but it's quite melancholy, but it's from like a big Hollywood movie, and I'm sure like there's like Chinesey instruments. It's like the vibe is Oriental.
Is that it?
Yeah, that's kind of it.
It sounds familiar.
I don't know what it's from, man. I thought, is that from Black Rain? Hans Zimmer, but it's not, although it's similar. And then I thought, is it like Jean-Michel Jarre or Jan Hammer or it's got. I'm sure it's like from an 80s film. And if guys, you can help me out, it'd be really good because
So
it's been bugging me for days.
This billion-dollar idea you've had, what it actually is spend years cultivating an audience for a live show, so that instead of developing software, all you have to do is play it to them, and then hopefully one of them will recognize it for you, rather than having some kind of a recognition software. You're relying on the masses. Is that what you're saying?
This works, man. Look, Void Captain Bazooka says, "Is that from the film Goodbye, Mr. Lawrence?" That could be that. It was on the tip of my tongue. Maybe it is. Let's. Thank you so much. Ask your mates, says Notch Spear. Name for the app. Ask your mates. Phone a friend. Ask your mates.
Well, how about this? If anyone actually finds that tune, then post it in our Facebook group, which is linked in the description, and then we'll be able to determine whether you were correct or not.
I think Name That Tune is a good name for the app. Name That Tune by Remington Industries.
$1 billion guaranteed. So
I don't know how you'd program it in, but yeah.
So we finished combat resolution. How about the Winds of Magic? Got a nice picture of the magic dial here. And is this something that you miss? The power of the magical essences that's available during the game in a completely separate phase. It's very fickle. Occasionally you'll be able to just throw out huge game-changing spells, and sometimes it'll just be like a disappointing little and nothing. You'll be lucky if you can raise a skeleton. How did you feel about that whole dynamic?
I never used it, but it's a cool picture, and it would look cool on a t-shirt.
Well, I think you would have used quite a bit of magic, though, with your beastmen, surely. The shamans running around the herdstone, generating magic dice and whatnot. Isn't that something they could do?
Oh, the magic dice. Yeah, I remember that. That was good fun, that was. Yeah, you could do more spells, but you could blow yourself up, couldn't you, as well?
Yeah, so it's good unless you're playing against dwarves, in which case, well, you've got some nice magic dice there. It'd be a shame if something happened to them. I'll take all those and I'll use them to dispel you instead.
If I got this right, if you can any army dispel, or do you have to have a wizard to dispel?
Are you talking about in Age of Sigmar now, or back in the day?
Yes. Well, back in the day, if you lost your wizard, you couldn't dispel it, could you?
Back in the day, I'm not sure whether you could even attempt to dispel. You definitely didn't get any kind of bonus, though. I remember.
Yeah, because you got a bonus for each wizard, didn't you? You got an extra dice. Magic dice.
And you would have, like, plus something based on your casting level to your casting roll, that type of thing.
Yeah, those battle magic cards, they were beautiful, weren't they? They were great, man.
I've got the Lore of the Vampires around somewhere. I've got all the original old magic cards from the last edition of Fantasy, and the vampire ones as well.
Yeah, I've still got
nice.
2 of them.
I always found them a lot of fun.
Yeah, I think Age of Sigmar, people are getting too many models, right? And I don't think the game was ever designed to be a mass fantasy battles game. And I think as people are acquiring more armies, more figures, then they're going to sort of maybe. That's why maybe they're gravitating back to squares.
Do you feel like endless spells really hit? Like, did it scratch the same itch that the old magic cards used to do? I never really felt that. I think endless spells, in some ways, they're more reliable, but in other ways they're random. Like, you'll have the ones where both players can move them around the table and that kind of.
Yeah,
I wasn't really a fan of that.
Both players shouldn't be able to move them unless they've got like a wizard in range.
Yeah, if it's too powerful to have just one player moving it or random movement, then maybe tone it down a bit instead of allowing both players to move it. And then whoever happens to win the duel of pushing the vortex around wins. Not sure how I felt about that. I'm really a fan. But the actual magic cards, where it was random which spells you would have, so you couldn't necessarily plan to have a specific one unless you take multiple wizards of high levels. I liked that element to it, because your casting experience in a game would never be the same across multiple games.
That was when Pit of Shades and Purple Sun were the great equalisers, weren't they?
Well, equalisers or just annihilators.
Yeah.
And William says, didn't dwarves get free dispel dice? Yes, they did, and you could take all kinds of runes on your runesmiths to give them even more bonuses to dispelling, which I'm sure was the bane of Mr. Remington's existence once or twice.
Yeah, that was dumb. I mean, maybe, the effects of magic would be like a bit worse on dwarves because they're naturally resistant, but to just automatically have them dice, it's like if you're just a basic dwarf warrior, what would you know about magic and dispelling a spell?
Exactly. You'd put dispel scrolls onto characters, that was a thing. Stu
Yeah.
has just reminded me of dispel scrolls, so as soon as the first good spell goes off, scroll in it. And at least it used to be a thing, didn't it, like drawing out the scroll early on. So you would cast a spell that you didn't really think you were going to succeed with, but you just want to get rid of that scroll so you could use your other spells afterwards. So it was quite an interesting little mini game, which clearly doesn't exist in the same form now, Age of Sigmar. And in the old world, Warhammer the Old World, whenever that hits, I wouldn't mind a return to that kind of thing. I'm not sure I'd want it in every game system, because it can get quite bogged down. But I think there is a place for it somewhere.
Andy, do you think the audience will mind if I bombard them and yourself with a second $1 million idea?
Well, I don't think their bank accounts will mind if they manage to actually put them into action. But if it's something that's already been thought of and already widely available to the masses, then I'm not sure how they'll feel. That could cause another spike in dislikes, but I think we can take the risk. Go on.
Okay, it's specifically for Warhammer Fantasy or Age of Sigmar. Okay, but do you know how you've got the endless spells, right? But when you buy, when you get an army and when you get the army book, there are special magic items, aren't they, for specific races and general ones. Well, why not make a line of models that are those magic items? Like the Sword of Ruin. That's an actual model sword you can get, and you can put it on one of your miniatures. Or the Axe of Dismay. And you buy a box and it's got all the magic weapons and that, right? The Goblet of Fire, there's an actual thing. So you can look at a miniature and say, oh, that miniature's got the Axe of Dismay, hasn't he?
So would you have a little system where you would like magnetize them into place? So you could switch them around?
Sure, we'd have to work out the details. I'll let you and the sort of engineering team work on the details, man. I'm the ideas man.
I can think of one example of this that kind of exists, and it would be in the board game. I think it was Dark World, was it called? And you'd start off with like a little rusty old silvery or brown weapon maybe, and then when you get further into the dungeon you would unlock like the gold weapon, so you would put the fancy weapon in their hand slot instead. Rather than just having a card that says you've got a new weapon, it was actually a little gold weapon that you would slot into the miniature. I think that's what it was called. Game. If anyone thinks I'm wrong, let me know.
I mean, Andy, I can see your cogs of your mind are working, right? And I think you think this is a great idea. I mean, there used to be like magical banners, didn't there? Like Banner of the World Dragon for the High Elves and banner of this. But what if that was an actual banner that Games Workshop like modeled and supplied? It'd be kind of cool, right? It's a no-brainer.
It would be something you would really have to consider before you start an army, wouldn't it? Rather than chopping off things that are already half painted.
Sure, but like you put, just like the end of spells, you bring out the generic ones first.
I think it would be most suited to like kind of a skirmish level game, because you would sell the box of miniatures and each one of them would have like a little slot where the magnet goes on their wrist, and then lots of different weapons that have their own unique abilities, and you could switch them out and upgrade them as time goes on. So I remember playing Gorka Morka back in the day and finding that one of my orcs would lose a leg in battle, and you'd roll on the random table and suddenly he'd have a wheel for a leg so he could move faster. But actually modelling that on there always felt a little bit risky if you'd already spent a long time painting it. Do you really want to just hack his leg off and put a wheel on there? But if you had pieces that were interchangeable built into the box, I think there could be money in that idea under those circumstances.
People love hobbying, man. They love chopping up miniatures and sticking them back together again.
It would be great for Lego. And in fact, Mickey says that Lego Hero Quest has weapons and armour. when you get the items. Yeah, so that would be something you should pitch to Lego, I think. That's something they can definitely do with interchangeable pieces. Should we head on down to Legoland and start pitching them ideas? Because I don't think Games Workshop are going to give us any money.
Games Workshop are the tightest company in the world. But, but that has changed a little bit. They are doing a special deal on the End Times books. I think you get all 5 for 30 quid. I might be wrong about the price, but when they first came out, they were like £30 each. So that's kind of cool. Yeah, they're back open, by the way. I've been checking every day. I think a couple of days ago, maybe 3 days ago, it was just like they couldn't take any more orders. They're temporarily closed, but now they're back in business, man.
So, the last few weeks we've had some complaints on this show that it was turning into the Remington eBay hour. And I don't know whether these are going to go on eBay or not, but we're looking at your dwarves now. And we're starting with what appears to be the Dwarf Lords of Legend collection, which I also have. Not all painted up like this, though. A couple of them are painted, some of them definitely not. But did you get these Lords of Legend back when they were first around, or did you get them as part of the Skulls promotion, which is when I got mine?
No, this is first time around, man. John Blance's artwork, box set, $4.95. These were like the best miniatures I ever saw at the time. And I think these particular ones went under, they've been repainted 2 or 3 times. But I think King Gorin with the sword is standing on a orc's head that he's chopped off at the back there. It was the first miniature that I painted pretty well, I'll say.
Is that still the paint job on it there that you think is good?
Yes. Yeah. And back in the day, I used to put milliput on the bases and then get a cocktail stick and like prod it to make it look a bit like sort of foliage, and then paint it with Goblin Green.
But all Goblin Green, you can't go wrong with that. Yeah,
but as I grew a bit better paint, a bit older, it was like, the pirate dwarf at the front, the sort of Sinbad dwarf that became a favourite.
With the big, the one in the middle there.
Yeah, I mean, with the, wouldn't it be cool if the Sky Dwarves were actually like that?
It would be cool if they had beards. Yes, that's the most important thing.
There you go.
So the ones of these that I've got that are painted, the one with the big beard with a chain in his mouth, I've used that in a kind of Kings of War diorama base.
Robin Deatheye, his name is.
And I think the one you described with the sword pointing up into the air like that, I actually made that into a unique objective marker when I went to Adepticon for the Warhammer tournament a few years ago. Because I decided to browse the tournament pack a week before I left for the first time, and so actually you need to bring your own custom objective marker. So I thought, got a dwarf of Lord of Legend here, let's stick him on some bases, paint him as a statue, and use that. And I thought, even if it looks awful, he's metal, so I can easily paint strip it later and do something better with him. So that's what he's doing. Most of them are just sat in a little box somewhere, untouched. I've still got the little certificate that came with it when I got them from collecting enough Skulls tokens in the 90s.
It's a great set, man. I hope they bring him out again.
We're onto your organ gun now. And when was this painted? It looks like it's pretty modern basing here, so I'm going to assume this wasn't a huge amount of time ago.
2012 this was painted.
That's better than my painting in 2012.
Yeah, not bad. I put a couple of skeleton skulls on the front there. Yeah, nice, man. Old chariot base there. And the models wouldn't quite fit on it properly and kept falling off, but yeah, there you are. All these got sold, by the way.
So it's not even Remington's eBay hour. We're onto your dwarf cannon now. This is your flame cannon, in fact. I didn't have one of these. I still don't.
I doubled this up as Kathleen the Halfling steam tank as well. It was about the right size for a Halfling steam tank, but yeah, this is the flame cannon. Wasn't the first GW flame cannon?
No, there is another one that was a bit less dragony looking. It kind of had flame effects on the end of the barrel instead, didn't it?
Sure. This one, I can tell you, is quite sought after now. But it's a real chunk of metal. Tell you that. Heavy.
And there's some kind of little field gun here. Got.
This is a classic miniature. This was the Dwarf Swivel Gun.
They almost look gnome-like, don't they? Some of these dwarves.
Yeah. This is like Renaissance Dwarves, Marauder Miniatures, subsidiary of Games Workshop, Citadel. I think, was it Ali and Trish Morrison maybe designed these? Might be wrong about that. But yeah, you'd get 2 of those in a blister pack. I managed to get my hands on these guys and add them to my collection. Oh, I've got a new subscriber to my channel.
Oh.
That means I've got 686 subscribers.
So that's 686 people not watching videos because there aren't any new ones.
That's 3 more subscribers from last week. So Nox Spear, thank you very much. Enjoy a blast down the past and look at all my tremendously fine videos from the world of Warhammer Fantasy.
And demand the return of Remington's Pillow Talk because it seemed to be wildly popular at the time, and we've had call for its return regularly in the chat on these shows, but yet it still hasn't returned.
I'm giving you all the magic I got, guys, in this show every Tuesday night. What else we got, Andy? Keep
Gyrocopter. So this is a very fancy looking little base there. You've not gone for just the traditional kind of a transparent stick holding it in place. It's actually perched on a rock by the looks of it.
Yeah, that was a big deal. Getting him to stay on that rock. Yeah, I think this was the first design for the Gyrocopter and my favourite. There was one after this that weren't as good in my opinion. And then, of course, the new ones seem a lot more practical because you can see with that design, his hand will probably get chopped off with the propeller being so
crude. It either reminds me of the tiny little helicopter from that one James Bond film that he has.
Yeah.
Or like Mad Max. I think it's the Mad Max 2, is it? Where there's a little helicopter.
It's a bit like it's an Austin Powers helicopter, that, isn't it?
Really crude little piece of technology. Onto the hammerers. Now, these are some nice modern dwarves now. Not old school at all.
Yeah, these are sick, man. I've actually still got these. So here's your classic 20 man unit, and you've got the champion in the middle, musician on one side, standing bear on the other, and then you've got all the foot soldiers behind them. I mean, you know, looking at that, it's just a glitter of silver, isn't it? And it's spectacular. And the base as well.
The banner, I think, is the thing that stands out there to me. Bit of freehand work going on there, presumably.
Definitely, man. This was a time when banners, right, really meant something. It really gave your unit an identity. It seems like that isn't the case anymore, right? Banners don't seem to be a thing.
Well, when a unit's not regimented like that, it doesn't give you the same feel. Like when you watch the classic battle films, where you'll have the units marching forward, you'll have the big battle lines, and then you can see from the banners where each individual unit is. And you still have that in effect if you're playing Warhammer Total War, for example.
Yeah.
You're determining unit positions by looking at the banners, and then you'll zoom in and you'll see all your little hammerers down there. But yeah, I feel that is something that's a little bit lost nowadays in Warhammer.
I used to send messages to you via the banners, didn't I? Like, Andy must die. And then, you know, I thought about getting a photocopy of your face and sticking it on one of the banners with sort of like blood coming out the neck. Like
there are lots of examples of people who put personalised messages on their banners, or after they defeated a certain enemy, they would write something on the banner. Victory. In blood sometimes. And we've
hear. Oh, sorry, go on.
I was just going to move on to the picture of these heroes.
All right. I did hear there was one tournament where if you lose, you have to give your opponent a banner from your army as a souvenir.
It sounds like an invitation for people to turn up with the shoddiest paintwork on their banners I've ever seen, though.
Right, what are you looking at now?
We're looking at 3 of your heroes here. Is that Gotrek there, and a runesmith, and
Yeah,
a standard bearer?
that's the original Gotrek. I don't know. Do you think the new one's better? Probably, isn't it?
Well, it's more cinematic, obviously, but I do like the old school dwarves.
Yeah, these guys had a bit of a comedy value. That guy at the back, that was the Dwarf Army standard bearer. So not only did each unit have a bit standard, but you would have an army standard bearer, which would give you +2 resolution at the end of the combat phase, wasn't it? So it was a very special one. And if you manage to take this guy out, then I think you get extra points or something like that.
Bazooka says banners are sure to be back in the old world. Well, I certainly hope they're more of a thing, because it's an opportunity for the more skilled painters, or even people who are just wanting to dabble maybe in freehand design. Gives them an opportunity to work on a nice flat canvas there that's like the signature piece of the unit. And it's definitely something I think is missing, and this is a very nice banner here on your Fancy Pants new iron breakers as well. I say new, but it's still like, what is it, about 6 years ago now?
No more, you know. I think these come out in 2012, right?
I think the last batch of dwarves, I think, were 2014, yeah. So I got some of these, but I turned mine into iron drakes, obviously. I already had iron breakers.
Literally like 6 months or so before they changed it all and killed off.
Not too far off that.
Wow. Yeah, these are actually long beards.
Oh, these long beards.
Yeah, these are long beards.
Oh, they look kind of the same, don't they?
Yeah, I love the Baldy dwarf with the beat in the drum. Quality, man. Yeah, you see that banner? Took me ages to do that.
It's a very detailed little face in there.
I've still got them guys too.
What does it say on the banner, or is it just random assortment of dwarf symbols?
Yeah, just random. Sorry.
So it doesn't say like death to the Ungor or something like that?
I thought about sending a message, and I thought no one's probably ever going to read it. So
it'd be a nice little Easter egg for somebody. Okay, now we know who these guys are. These are Long Drong Slayer Pirates, which I used to have as well, but I think I got rid of mine a long time ago. And very tasty models indeed.
Just a regiment of renown. These dwarves were had so many pistols, they had a special pistol attack. No, what do they call it? Festooned with pistols was a special rule. That's a good word, isn't it? Festooned.
Yeah, you don't hear that enough, actually.
That's an Andy word, isn't it?
It should be. I might have to adopt that. So, on to the king. Mr. Grudge Bearer himself, with the big giant book. I'm sure he's looking at a petty slight in there as he marches into battle.
Well, GW actually just reissued him for 1 week only, I think.
Is he? What material is he in? Is he in Finecast?
Yeah, Finecast. I mean, I say just reissued him. This is probably 18 months ago now, but I haven't walked since the time. Yeah, I think I did a pretty steady job of that one. Great centerpiece to the army.
It certainly is, and he's very fun to use on the Total War as well. Brilliant.
I mean, dwarves, they need a centerpiece, don't they? Because they don't have monsters.
At least they didn't back then.
Well, yeah, they didn't back then.
On to Thunderers. Now, some of these, I definitely had most of these models back in the day. I think now I've only got 1 or 2. I think I've got some of the front rank Thunderers that look like they're wearing Santa hats. I've got quite a few of those in my army at the moment.
They were the better ones. The ones at the back, they were sort of mid-90s rather than early 90s, and they were too detailed. Too much stuff going on.
Too many little tankards and pipes and just things dangling all over them.
And look, you don't even notice any of that stuff, you know?
Yeah, for the rank and file infantry, that's one downside to being ranked up so tightly. You can't see all the tiny little things hanging off their belts. Onto the Slayers. Again,
it took me a while to get these together. 35 metal Slayers.
It's another unit that I used to have back in the day, never finished painting them, and eventually got rid of them. But very nice classic miniatures. Is that a demon slayer at the front?
That is a demon slayer. Here's a little trivia for you. Name the dwarf that's on the left, far left. What's his name? Special character.
Was he the one that was around during the Slayer army time?
He has a connection to it.
Was that model released like around the time of the Goblin Hewer?
Yeah, could have been, but it's not connected to the Goblin Hewer, no. Anyone in the chat? Come on, you oldies. Come on, you're going to know this, surely.
Raphael says Ungrim Iron Fist.
No. It's the son of Ungrim Iron Fist.
What's his name?
Name is Garagrim. Garagrim Iron Fist. I think he actually gets killed in the story for Ungrim.
Well, there you go. Some informative trivia nuggets there. And onto these Bugman's Rangers here. They've got a giant bee. Did you paint all those beer mugs on there yourself?
Yes, apart from Bugman's. I managed to find a shield that had the Bugman's logo embossed on it, which was, I've never seen that shield anywhere else. But yeah, this unit was a labour of love. It took me 25 years to complete. I just couldn't look at them anymore because the problem is that the Rangers, they're actually quite poorly made figures. A lot of their faces are kind of a bit blotchy, but the characters in the unit were absolutely amazing. Yeah, so they are. They're like festooned with gear as well. They've got like crossbows, double-handed axes, shields, and axes, and belts.
Well, you want the characters to stand out on these huge, densely packed units, though, don't you?
Yeah, they sure do.
Onto the miners. Yeah. So, these look like old classic miners, but are there any more modern ones in there as well?
The modern ones were garbage, mate. These were the metal classic ones.
Is that banner classic as well?
Yeah, that's real bona fide gold, that is.
Does it have an accompaniment on it that wasn't there originally, perhaps, that banner? That little string of dwarven symbols coming down from the head on the top of it. That looks like a plastic piece.
No, that's part of it. Promise you.
I don't think I've seen that before. But obviously, miners, very tasty. There's one of the... Is it one of the Dwarf Lords of Legend? Looks a bit like a miner. He's got like a pickaxe, hasn't he?
Yeah, that's right. Oh, I can't remember his name.
But
I think it begins with U.
Yeah, I used that one in my miners unit.
Nice.
Onto the... I'm going to assume this unit is the one that drove you the most insane. Painting a spiral kind of bumblebee design onto all the spears. Why did you even think that was a good idea?
Mental, man. I think I might have saw it in a book somewhere or saw it on a Bretonian lance and thought, oh, I could do that. And then I was rubbish at painting yellow back then as well because I used to base coat all my miniatures black. So I'd been painting yellow over the black, which meant that you just had to do a ton of different coats. So nightmare when you're trying to do a spiral. And yes, it did drive me insane. And no, it's not perfectly accurately painted, but they look great.
You were so concerned with whether you could, you didn't stop and think whether you should.
That's the kind of phrase I think you've been waiting to say for years, isn't it?
I think, to be fair, it could be used quite a lot on you. Now, we've got some audience Facebook group stuff in here now. So I think these were from Sean in the Facebook group, and these are some mountains, some terrain he's been working on. And of course, we did pledge that when people start posting things in our Facebook group again, we will start showing them off and analysing them with some deep, probing, critical eyes being cast over.
That scenery is great, man. Great work.
And
cool lighting.
So very nice there. And I believe that these models coming up now are from Caspian. So first of all, look at this. This is clearly a dwarf with an axe, standing on a lot of stuff. Now, is this the new Gotrek here?
Yeah, yes, it is.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is. It's making me quite jealous looking at that. I wish I had that model. Amazing.
The floor he's standing on makes me think of Vermintide now. It's that kind of colour palette, isn't it?
Are you missing it, Andy?
Well, it's not been that long since we played. We're going to have to jump back into the Vermintide live stream bandwagon soon, aren't we? Especially since I just picked up all the DLC in the Steam sale.
That's right, guys. If you want to watch me and Andy play some Vermintide Warhammer End Times game on Steam, it's really good fun.
It includes such classic phrases as, "I don't drink this out of thirst." So there's the back view of this miniature, and that is a very nicely done metallic axe there. Look at that work on there.
Yeah, I need to learn how to do that, man. I mean, it's all the rage now, isn't it? Like, everyone's making their figures look brilliant.
It looks very much like non-metallic metal to me.
Right, okay. A lot of the greys there, and some grey blues.
It looks like it goes right up to a white.
Caspian, that's quality paint job, mate. Well done.
And then more from him. We've got these trolls, or what are they called now? Fellwater Troggoths.
I mean, why did they do that, man?
You can't trademark the word troll.
Why do you need to? Trademark the design rather than the name. Okay, whatever. All right.
We've got some close-ups of these guys, and I think the skin tone is very well done on these. You can see it better on this one, I think. Skin. Very nice indeed. This is the one holding a rock above his head.
Is this what the pros call light sourcing or source light painting or something like that?
There may be some of that going on in there. All I know is, looks tasty. Not that you should eat troll meat, because isn't that what happened to Grom Goblin?
Grom the Paunch?
Yeah.
Yes, it did. And it started regenerating his health, but it became really fat. Those Troggoths are amazing. I've got to get me some of them. Yes, they look cool.
And now we're on to the crowning. They're like the crown jewel of the broadcast. I think we're on to my dwarf army. Because I thought if we're going to look at all yours, why not just have a quick look at mine as well? So you can see these classic goblin green bases. Back when I used this nice, very goblin green looking gaming mat as well. This is from Games Workshop. This mat, back when they actually sold a grass mat. And these are my hammerers here.
There's one word, garish. What I'll say, garish.
Well, when I was painting the newer dwarves to match up with my old classic models, then the bases obviously had to match. And I've still got the pot of green flock in case I add more to the army in the future. I'm not using it on anything else. Got to preserve that stuff. It's like gold dust now.
This is the sort of unit you'd really love to get your artillery dice, right? And get your the round circle templates where your catapult would be landing. And you'd love to just put that circle plate right on top of them dwarves, wouldn't you?
I don't know.
Get them off the table, man.
I think you'd like to just admire them. And Anvil of Doom. Do you even have this Anvil of Doom?
I do not.
Or did you ever have it? Because I'm quite happy with how this came out, actually.
Yeah, that is nice, mate. I'll give you that.
Yeah, I think the guys on it look very nice. And there's no goblin green base on it either.
No, look at the difference it makes, right? I'm not sure about that yellow beard though.
Well, it was the theme of my army. Like about a third of them were blonde, a third of them ginger, and a third of them like white, grey beards.
Okay, now you say it like that, I think that's great. What happened? There was another part to this model, wasn't there? There was the apprentice.
That was around somewhere, but it had no effect on the game, so I was in no rush to actually paint it. That was the story behind that. And now onto a Rune Lord. This is a nice classic model as well. And some of these look quite nice, actually. Some of these are the ones that I painted in between 2012 and 14-ish kind of time. So I'll tell you when we get to a unit that was painted way before then. I think
those old school dwarves, they look really short, don't they? They've got like no legs.
Yeah, and it
Like,
doesn't help that their beard covers their entire body as well.
yeah, there's just like feet poking out the pits.
It's like if
I mean,
cousin It's just like shaved around the top of his head.
yeah, these guys had like 3-inch movement, didn't they? 3-inch movement, and I'm starting to think that was probably an inch too much.
Okay, now we're on to some bit of a more modern plastic here. So this is the Slayer that came in the Dwarf. Which was the starter set that came with the dwarves in it that this guy was in? This Slayer.
Let's have a look. I have to look on my phone because if I do it on the computer, it slows it all down.
Can't remember what it was
That
called.
that was from starter box set Battle at something pass.
Battle for Skull Pass.
That's it. Yeah.
That's the one. So with this guy though, I've replaced the axe heads, so he's got bigger axe heads, I think now. And also, this is the guy that's got his enlarged butt cheeks, which I don't think I've got a picture prepared. But with green stuff, I did make his butt significantly larger.
But the brave heart, isn't it? If you're with this guy.
Pretty much. I was trying out some weird different painting stuff when I was doing this guy, because this is when I got back into painting quite a few years ago now, when I was first re-emerging into the hobby. So I thought I'd try out some different hair style on him, some coloration there. And here's the Warhammer Quest Dwarf, painted to fit in with my army. This was painted a very long time ago. And I actually sold my copy of Warhammer Quest without this guy in it, and I just put a regular plastic dwarf in there. So I like this guy so much, I thought no one will notice if I just keep the dwarf out of it.
There's someone out there, Andy, with like a broken heart. They didn't get the complete collection of Hero Quest because of you. You still got this dwarf then? You still got it?
Yeah, that Warhammer Quest dwarf, I still have it. I might even still have the Wood Elf as well. Onto the Iron Drakes. So I think these look very nice. And obviously I was trying out different painting stuff here. This is when I discovered putting a blue glaze over silver. So I think this looks quite tasty. And everyone loves Iron Drakes, of course. People thought they were hideously overpowered at first glance. But they weren't too crazy.
I like these guys, especially when I used to bring my Thunder Tusk down and do D6 6 mortal wounds every round.
Impact hits.
Yeah. These guys were like buffed up, man, weren't they? These are the Iron Breakers. They're tough to kill. Yeah, I like them. They're very monopose, is that the word?
Yeah, you can't do that much with them. With the way they have to rank up, they kind of poke each other off the base because they're so bulky. It's like they were designed knowing that round bases were coming.
There was always that moment in every round of the game where it was like, right, time for my troll hammer torpedo. And then you'd miss.
Yeah, that torpedo never hit, did it? It's always the case though, isn't it? If you've got one special attack in the unit that has 1 dice, that one always misses.
I mean, I'm just painting this at the minute. I'm painting an Ogre Iron Blaster, right? I'm painting it really badly because I've kind of lost my mojo. Too hot to paint, isn't it? Let's face it. But yeah, the rules are it's just you only get 1 shot. I think you need like 4 to hit. It's so easy to miss, right?
Onto the Thunderers.
Yeah, okay.
So these guys are red, which is a bit of a blue and red theme across the army, but these guys are more red. And these guys aren't the best paint job, really. But they'll do. And there's some of the plastic ones that you hate at the back there. Just to bulk out the numbers a bit.
Yeah, they're nasty, man. Nasty.
And then we don't need to look at the hammers again. Don't know why there's another picture there. But we've got, now this is a classic unit here. This is the Great Axe Dwarves. And these were painted round about the year 2000. I think that's when the Dwarf plastic box set came out. So they've got mould lines on them. And this is what my painting was like 20 years ago. So this is when I discovered washes, by the way, this army.
You can definitely see a development, Andy, which is good, right?
You can definitely see that these are worse than some of the newer models that I've painted. And let's go straight onto the Iron Breakers, which I also painted around that time, with just silver and washes as well. So they're kind of similar. Just like silver, just balls of silver. And the Gyrocopter is a bit more exciting though. This is probably the most annoying Gyrocopter that they ever made. Because it was this was in metal, this one's not fine cast. So those metal propeller blades on the top, The amount of times they had to be pinned in place, I lost count, as they would just break off constantly. The only time they didn't break, weirdly enough, is when I took the model to America with me for a tournament, and it didn't come off once for some reason. But just moving it to a different shelf, it would just like, here's a piece of metal fallen off. But taking it to America on planes, no, it's fine.
Yeah, this was probably a better design though. Look, you could definitely fly high with that one compared to the first version, right? The first one was like, I'd be surprised if it even just hovered 2 foot in the air.
This is a model that needed to be in plastic though, because in metal it's too heavy and spindly, and in fine cast, if the room temperature is 1 degree higher than recommended, those are just going to start drooping, aren't they?
Oh, really?
Yeah, look how long and thin they are. So when you're in fine cast, that's not going to last long.
Wow. Whose $1 million idea was fine cast?
Probably someone that's not still working there.
I've actually got loads of fine cast miniatures. I've got loads of fine cast ogres.
I've got a couple.
And I'd really liked it. You know, I thought this is great until I started seeing parts of faces all just disintegrated.
Bubbles.
Yeah.
There's bubbles, and anytime you've got someone with a long sword, or they're on a horse that's like reared up, and then you leave it out on a windowsill and come back, and suddenly it's like, brrr.
Yeah, that sucked, man. Sucked.
Plastic organ gun. So this is one of the more modern paint jobs. When I got back into it, I got one of these, painted it up as I was bulking out my war machines. So that one, and I quite like this guy actually. This little hero here, Belagar Ironhammer, who I used in my most recent Total War Warhammer campaign. And I quite like the paint job on this guy. I painted him, anticipating taking him to the tournament in America. I think I only used him as a Thane or an Oathstone, though, rather than Belagar, because he was very expensive. Points.
Yeah. In Oathstone. Didn't they have some cool rules, man?
They did.
That was great. Yeah, they were tough nuts to crack, them dwarves, but I managed to, didn't I? On many occasions.
I wouldn't say many occasions. And we've got through all the pictures now. So let's just have a quick look at the chat before we start wrapping this one up. We've got Stu saying Finecast was awful. I don't think you're going to get too much argument from anyone on that particular point. Maxim says dwarves with go faster stripes. I don't think stripes would help dwarves go faster, to be honest. I think there are lost cause in that department. Raphael says it isn't a proper gyrocopter if the propeller doesn't move. And also, Raphael has apparently just ordered fine-cast Kroot hounds.
Oh.
Taking your life into your own hands here. Hopefully they're nice and bulky like ogres and not thin and spindly and just going to start drooping on you in the high temperatures. I
think they've got to bring back the dwarves, mate. I mean, the magazine's called White Dwarf, isn't it? Dwarves synonymous with Warhammer. Space dwarves as well. We'll bring them back.
Well, they've got a couple of squat out there now. Have you seen them?
Yeah, but I'm not talking about a couple.
Yeah, they're a bit tall though for my liking. They're not the same.
Let's bring on the hordes, right? The squat hordes.
I much preferred the squat that looked like they'd had their shins removed, rather than the current ones, which are just like stocky, maybe slightly below average height humans. Not so sure about them. Well, I think we've done quite well on this topic of the old world, and then we've dabbled in our own dwarf collections, which has hopefully inspired people to maybe take an interest in the old world again. Not that you've still got your dwarf army, though. Did you get a good price for it, at least?
I did, actually. I got a really good price. And I drove all the way to Sheffield because I didn't want to put them in the post. And I sat in the front room of this guy who's like a proper nerdy wargamer for about 40 years. And we chatted for ages, and I was like talking about all the characters, just like we've talked about. And he seemed really into it, and he got them all out, and he didn't want the plastic dwarves. So, but he was willing to pay the price that I asked for the whole army. So I thought, oh, look, well, are we sure? Okay, so I took my plastic dwarves back, like those long boys, the ones with the nice standards. I was like, okay. And then 2 weeks later, I looked on eBay, and the guy had sold all the ones that I sold him for half the price.
For half the price.
Yeah, pretty much.
I was going to say,
But
well, maybe he just didn't want the plastic ones if he was just going to flip them straight on eBay for a profit. But if he's not even making a profit,
nuts, mate. The only ones he kept, he didn't sell the organ gun. I mean, I even had a goblobber in there as well, classic goblobber, which I didn't put in the pictures, which was phenomenal. But yeah, he didn't sell the flame cannon or the swivel gun. It was weird. So yeah, that's the story of that.
so maybe he was just
Strange.
intoxicated by the pictures he'd seen of your army. And then when he saw them in the flesh, he couldn't resist, just threw money at you, and then realised, wait a minute, I'm on the verge of bankruptcy here. I need to do something about this. And then sold a few of them.
Maybe. Or his wife came home and says, "What have you just done?" and made him sell them.
Or maybe
That's what
he went away somewhere and someone sold them on his behalf without him knowing.
I just found it a bit weird.
Maybe he was fed to tigers and then his army sold.
Maybe though. But I got the impression this guy, he didn't show me his miniatures room. I was a bit disappointed because I'd driven 3 hours to get there. But I got the impression that he had like tens of thousands of models, tens of thousands. You know, he knew the code for each model.
Is that where you're heading in life?
What?
Having a vast collection again? After you've gone through all this trauma of selling your armies, are you going to start like regretting it and just compensating by hoarding them again and then never letting them out of your sight? Do you think there's going to be a backlash?
No, you get the enjoyment by painting them, you know, and then take really nice pictures, and then you don't have to be one of those guys that says, "Oh, I used to have a metal dwarf army." You can say, "I used to have a metal dwarf army. Here are the pictures," and then you kind of feel all right about it. Then.
So I feel about it. Like if, for example, I lost any of my armies, as long as I've taken nice pictures of them and people have seen them and have played some games with them, people have seen them in the flesh. After that point, you don't have the same level of attachment. It wouldn't be a huge loss if they disappeared after that stage. What I'm trying to say. Like once they've been exposed to the world, that can never be erased, and that's what part of the bond between you and the miniatures is. The actual physical miniatures themselves become less important, I think.
It's exactly well put, Andy. By the way, it's exactly the same as $1 million idea. You know, once you've explained the idea, once people have copied it, then you know it's a thing of the past, then, isn't it? I'm on to the next idea, so I don't get too attached.
Well, I've just got $1 million idea now.
Yeah.
Andy and Rem's miniature preservation service. For a hefty fee, will travel to people's homes, take beautiful pictures of their armies, and then present them back to them in like framed or album glory.
That's a cool idea. A miniature photography service, right?
I'm sure there's people doing it, but there's no one with our name recognition on it. I think
that'd be awesome. Like, just give us your miniatures for a weekend, and we'll take wicked photos of them on the battlefield in action. You know, in a light box. Because if you've ever actually tried to take really nice pictures of your miniatures, and especially a whole army, it takes flipping ages, man. You can't just like hover your camera over it and take a shot. It takes ages.
We've got people saying that actually is a great idea, so it's totally out of character for the $1 million idea concept.
I guess someone's going to write in the comments, someone already does that.
I'm sure someone does, but I think we could do it better. Keep your eyes peeled for that. Okay, I think it's time to wrap this one up, isn't it? So, let's bring up the episode thumbnail for everyone to look at, which was beautifully photoshopped, with Mr. Remington, of course, on a very old-school goblin, and me there on a slightly less old-school, bit more imposing dwarf lord with a couple of axes. Nice map of the old world there as well. So...
You've got the heroic face there, haven't you, Andy? I've got the sort of slightly disappointed...
Disappointed? Why am I a goblin kind of face expression?
And I'm about to get, like, killed really horribly.
Pretty much. And you've even got the old, like, techie blue background as well. from an old White Dwarf
Oh,
magazine.
Maxim, he wants the nerd he's asking for the nerd confession song.
Well, I think
It's gonna have to be next week, man.
yeah, we can actually do nerd confessions next week. We'll have a slightly less lengthy topic probably then, and we can have nerd confessions as well to round out the show. But for now, don't forget everyone to check out all the links in the description. Don't forget to like the video or dislike it if you feel that way inclined. And subscribe, obviously, if for some ungodly reason you haven't already. Also subscribe to Mr. Remington's channel and comment on all his old videos demanding the return of Remington's Pillow Talk. Maybe he'll actually do it if there's enough people clamouring for it. And don't forget to join the Facebook group. There's all links to Twitter and various fundraising sources down there if you want to throw all your money at me so I can buy more classic miniatures than Mr. Remington has. And would you like to say goodnight to the people before we depart, Mr. Remington?
Good night and God bless. Love you all.
So all that remains for me to say is good night out there, whatever you are.
It's the Andy and Remington Steel Show on your screens tonight. It's the Andy and Remington Steel Show for your home delight. We're talking about Age of Sigmar and anything else that is cool. Talking about